Hi friends, so you probably heard about the former intelligence analyst charged with leaking classified documents to The Intercept. Well, The Intercept denies it, of course, but David Hale, he's a former intelligence analyst, and he was arrested May 9th, and he was charged with leaking classified information about drone warfare and other counterterrorism measures to Jeremy Scahill. And he's been charged with 5 crimes related to the disclosure of military-related information and could face up to 50 years in prison if convicted. The Justice Department indictment details alleged contact with a reporter dating back to April 2013, at which time Hale is accused of meeting with probably Jeremy Scahill at a bookstore in Washington, D.C. The indictment lists 36 total documents Hale is alleged to have printed, 11 of which are classified. While the reporter to whom Hale is accused of leaking is not named in the indictment, the description and the timing of the reporting described in the document suggests it was Jeremy Scahill who co-founded The Intercept and has reported extensively on U.S. military activities. The Intercept said it does not comment on anonymous sources in its statement on the indictment.
One last thing, I just would like to, in a way, say I'm sorry. I'm not up here for any good reasons. And to the people in the audience who are victims or who are families of victims or have families who live in countries where U.S. militarism and specifically unmanned systems are conducting kinetic strikes. I'm sorry because I'm up here because I was, for a short period of time during my military career, as an analyst working with unmanned systems deployed to Afghanistan. And at the very least, you all deserve an apology.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Hale. I was a veteran of the United States Air Force from 2009 until 2013. Through my experience and my deployment to Afghanistan, where I was primarily tasked with pursuing high-value targets through the utilization of unmanned systems, or otherwise known as drones, I came to learn of the thousands of prisoners who remain at the prison in Bagram Air Force Base to this day, who are in similar situations to those at Guantanamo, who are continually held indefinitely for benign or otherwise petty offenses or reasons not given to them whatsoever.
The people who defend drones and defend the way that they're used, they always say, you know, they protect American lives by not putting them in harm's way. But what they really do is they just embolden commanders. They embolden decision makers because there is no threat. There is no immediate consequence. They can do this strike and they can potentially kill this person that they're so desperate to get and to eliminate because of how dangerous, potentially dangerous they could be to the U.S. But if it just so happens that they don't kill that person or that some other people are involved in the strike and get killed as well, you know, there's no consequence for it. When it comes to high-value targeting, every mission is to go after one person at a time. But anybody else that's killed in that strike is just blanketly assumed to be an associate of the targeted individual. So as long as they can reasonably identify that all of the people in the field of view of the camera are military-aged males, meaning anybody who's believed to be of age 16 or older, they are a legitimate target under the rules of engagement. If that strike occurs and kills all of them, they just say that they got them all. When the president gets up in front of the nation and says that they're doing everything they can to ensure that there is near certainty that there will be no civilians killed, he is saying that because he can't say otherwise. Because any time an action is taken to finish a target, there is a certain amount of guesswork in that action, because it's only in the aftermath of any kind of ordnance being dropped that you know just how much actual damage was done. And oftentimes the the intelligence community is reliant, the Joint Special Operations Command, the CIA included, is reliant on intelligence coming afterwards that confirms that who they were targeting was killed in that strike, or that they weren't killed in that strike.
James Risen, director of First Look Media's Press Freedom Defense Fund, and the Intercept senior national security correspondent also released a statement. Like, he's, quote, like previous prosecutions of alleged journalist sources, the prosecution of Daniel Hale amounts to an abuse of the Espionage Act to criminalize the process of reporting. Everyone who cares about press freedom should reject the government's outrageous crackdown on whistleblowers, which accelerated dramatically under President Barack Obama and has escalated further under Donald Trump, targeting the very people who are working the hardest to hold the government accountable for abuses and to protect our democracy, end quote. Hale is the 7th person to be investigated by the Trump Justice Department for allegedly sharing confidential information with the press. The Trump administration is on pace to surpass Barack Obama's administration's record of the most prosecutions of alleged journalistic sources. During President Obama's 8 years in office, the Department of Justice brought charges against 8 people accused of leaking to the media. So that was from the US Press Freedom Tracker. This is another sort of a Chelsea Manning situation. And I wonder, and this is something to wonder about, is the Trump administration going to try and prosecute Jeremy Scahill for being the alleged journalist who David Hale leaked this information to. This is where the precedent of Julian Assange being them trying to prosecute him under the Espionage Act. Julian Assange is an Australian citizen, and Julian Assange, of course, is you would all be aware by now that they're trying to extradite him to the United States to probably throw him in prison in solitary confinement for 45 years, probably torture him, and possibly even try and execute him and under the Espionage Act. So this is all sort of really, really unfortunate, and this is exactly the sort of thing that anybody protesting the arrest of Julian Assange, and he's rotting away now in Belmarsh prison, anybody who's against the arrest of Chelsea Manning, again, she's been arrested again, and she's just been released yesterday, and she had, because the grand jury expired, I think, and now they're going to reassemble, and she'll probably be back in prison in about 5 days. There's another grand jury thing with her on the 16th of May, I think. So she'll be back in prison again, and this will just go on and on and on for Chelsea Manning. That's very disturbing, because I sort of wish that when she was released the first time, that she had moved to some other country, like tried to move to Canada. She has great, sort of qualifications. She could have got a job. I'd say, move to Australia, except they wouldn't let her into Australia to even give talks. It's disgraceful. But you wouldn't expect anything different from the Scott Morrison government. Or probably even if the Bill Shorten gets in the elections coming up in Australia soon, he probably wouldn't let her in either. They're almost as bad as one another when it comes to being US lackeys. But I wish that Chelsea Manning had moved to another country, because I feel like they're just going to keep doing this until she either harms herself in prison, or she's just becomes a complete psychologically traumatized and incapable of doing anything. This is part of this. What they're trying to do to Julian Assange is sort of incapacitate them physically and mentally and psychologically, and also possibly even drive them to suicide. That's sort of, I think, all part of it. And it's also to make an example of them for anyone who's thinking about whistleblowing or assisting whistleblowers. This is what can happen to you. So this is another example with David Hale of making an example of David Hale, and it's very, very sad. And I feel like this is just going to go on and on and on. So I want to briefly talk about Iran and the terrible empire shenanigans going on. Shenanigans seems too light a word. These are dangerous dangerous behavior, of course, by an unhinged John Bolton, who I think Trump may be getting maybe feeling that he might have made a mistake when he asked John Bolton to be the National Security Advisor, because as he joked at one point, John Bolton, he joked that John Bolton was probably going to try and get him into more wars. Well, it turns out that's exactly right. And of course, Trump is not pro-peace or anything. He's not an anti-interventionist, even though he ran on that he didn't want to get involved in any wars. But he's been upping the bombings, and the killing of civilians has gone up. That was a big lie. But of course, I don't think he particularly, I don't know, but I don't think he personally wants to get into the awful quagmire and dangerous situation with Iran that is developing. But then he has a donor who helped him get into office, Sheldon Adelson, who is pro-Israel. He actually called for Iran to be nuked at one point. This is Sheldon Adelson. And Sheldon Adelson gave him many millions of dollars, and 2 other billionaires did too, so to help him get into office. And he owes Sheldon Adelson, and Sheldon Adelson is major pro-Israel, and that's why you see all sorts of vilification of Palestinians by Trump, and vilification just basically and vilification of Iran, because it's been like that from the beginning. Even though I say that Trump doesn't want a war with Iran, he's been vilifying Iran since he got into office. So who knows if he wants a war or he doesn't want a war, I don't know, but I think he's an idiot, and I don't think he's just letting John Bolton, he's been letting John Bolton and these generals run the show, and I don't know, I think he's embarrassed by John Bolton and this failed coup, this really botched up failed coup in Venezuela, and maybe he's rethinking his choice, because John Bolton is absolutely salivating at the idea of a war with Iran. That man is so unhinged, so terribly unhinged, it's scary. And Pompeo, of course, has been itching to cause trouble for Iran. And Iran is not going to let their oil, the income from their oil, it's not going to let that happen. So, there's more upping of military, like naval ships and all sorts of things going to around that area. And Iran is probably, I think it has withdrawn from the JCPOA because it didn't see the point in staying in it anymore, since the US has pulled out of it and all this kind of thing. It's a mess, and it could be ugly. I would like to think that it's just Trump again doing what he did with DPRK, where he thinks that he's got this idea that if you saber rattle really extremely towards a country and then you pull back at the last minute when it's looking really dire. Of course, that is a really dangerous way of conducting what he seems to think everything is business. And I don't know if he's doing this with Iran, but I mean, if you leave this situation in the hands of people like John Bolton, who is completely unhinged and has even written about his desire to invade Iran. Well, if you leave it in the hands of people like that, pulling back may be something that it will be very impossible. So anyway, it's really crazy living in a world where you've got this empire, this rogue empire going around threatening people left and right like this. It's just ridiculous. If it's not Venezuela, it's Iran, and if it's not Iran, it's just sort of, it's insane. It really is. It's insane. I've been watching the Duran. It's on YouTube. It has Alexander Makuris and Alex Christopher and Peter Lavelle. I don't agree with everything they say, but they have some interesting views on Iran and this military, the frightening military escalation from the US towards Iran. So you might want to check that out. Just a quick thing about Venezuela. I'm sorry about the wind. Might try and turn it this way. About Venezuela, the Venezuelan embassy, you may or may not know that there's been an embassy protection collective there of a bunch of people who were invited into the embassy to help sort of protect the embassy from the pro-coup protesters who have been outside the embassy, and they've been literally stopping food from going into the embassy. And now the Secret Service and the police have been assisting the pro-coup protesters. Now they've turned off the electricity and the water to the Venezuelan embassy, which is outrageous, because the Venezuelan, that's against the law to actually be interfering with an embassy. That's like a sovereign, that's like part of Venezuela. It's like a sovereign territory, sort of sovereign. It's a building that should not be interfered with. You might want to check that out if you go to the Mint Press News, or go to the Grey Zone Project. You'll see what's happening there. Very interesting, and I hope that it doesn't end badly. I worry that something's going to happen where some police are going to storm the building or something. They don't seem to have any sort of respect at all for the Venezuelan government, or any government that the US wants to overthrow. Any government for oil, any government they want to overthrow, any country for oil, and Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on the planet. Iran has the 4th largest reserves of oil on the planet. Anyway, it's just sort of one saber rattling towards, back and forth. It's sort of from one day to the next. So anyway, that's really, I suppose, all I wanted to say. If there's any way you can spread the news about David Hale, he's looking at 50 years in prison. That'll be another Chelsea Manning thing. Just like Chelsea Manning, they'll try and make an example of him and persecute him. And that's sort of I think 6 whistleblowers in 2 years for the Trump administration. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you like the content. Please click the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive updates. Sorry about the wind. I thought it wasn't going to be windy today, but anyway, I thought it'd be nice to do something outside, and you can see the lovely trees in the background. There's Alia there. Oh no, that's Nandi. That's Nandi in the background. We don't like to dress up our cats. That's a bird be safe collar. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Leave comments if you wish. Until next time, bye for now.